Despite spending hundreds of billions of dollars, hunger in America is a problem that just won't go away. Some estimates now say that 1 in 5 children in the United States do not have enough food to eat. School lunch programs help many of the children, but it's not enough to provide for an entire day's worth of nutrition. An inadequate food supply can not only stunt a child's growth, but reduce cognitive abilities as well. This can hamper their education throughout school. Children who suffer even a mild lack of food can feel distracted and tired in school. In all, 50 million Americans, almost 1 in 6, do not have an adequate food supply. Many of these families are not employed. College graduates are also feeling the pinch. Studies show that a degree is no longer a guarantee of making even a modest living. Families are working hard to provide for themselves, but are unable to make ends meet, compounding the problem. The House of Representatives has recently voted to cut the federal food stamp program by $39 billion over 10 years. b1SdtIa8CzrW1nx Pham came to the United States from Vietnam as a child. Her family spent time as refugees from the Vietnam War, and today she is the chairperson of a federal committee looking into how to reform welfare. b1SdtIa8CzrW1nx is our guest on the show today, and she'll talk to us about the problem of hunger in the United States. We'll also discuss how we as a nation may one day overcome this problem. Welcome to the show, b1SdtIa8CzrW1nx.
Great, thank you so much for having me. I just wanted to clarify also that the committee we're working on works on federal issues and is not a federal government committee.
Thanks for that clarification. Now, how widespread is the problem of hunger in America?
As you've just mentioned, there are just so many millions of Americans who the government has found to be being hungry and really having such a hard time accessing food and putting enough food on their table. We have about 46.5 million Americans who are receiving the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which used to be the food stamp program. And there are individuals who are eligible, or poor enough to be eligible for that program, but not receiving. So there are more hungry people out there who actually would be eligible. So I thought your introduction to this show was a very good one to talk about why there's so much need, and that when we have a situation where 1 in 7 Americans need to rely on the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, that tells you the extent of the need.
Because of the people who do not have enough to eat, how many of them are children? You said 1 in 7.
Well, there are 1 in 7 who receive the SNAP program. The federal poverty data just came out, and it shows that the child poverty rate is about 22%. So 22% of America's children are impoverished. And when you look at the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, about 80% of the current recipients of that program are children and their parents. So mostly single parents. So it's very much impacting the kids in our country.
Now, of those children, do you have a location or a region that they are more or less concentrated?
They're the same areas as in the country as where the concentrated poverty is. So it's really in all parts of the country. You certainly have, you do tend to see more poverty in the southern states of the country. You see higher poverty in the rural areas, as well as the urban areas. So, but it's really all over, and more since the Great Recession, we're seeing these populations of hungry children in the suburbs because of the families who've lost their jobs and have had a hard time either finding work or finding work that was equivalent to the jobs the wages they were earning before.
So it's not necessarily concentrated in just urban areas, but also suburban and even rural areas.
That's correct.
b1SdtIa8CzrW1nx, despite the great wealth of the United States, why do people still go hungry?
We've been seeing a trend of the average middle class working family as earning about as much as they've earned over the past decade or two, but with costs really skyrocketing. So we're seeing families that are still working hard, very productive, earning about as much as they used to, but then they have to pay for a significantly increased housing costs, significantly increased healthcare costs, educational costs to send their kids to college, gas prices, you name it, food prices going up. So it's just harder and harder for the middle class American family to make ends meet. And so what we're seeing every year are more and more Americans, middle class Americans, falling into the lower middle class, the working class, the working poor, and the poor, because this really, it starts a tumbling effect. More than half the bankruptcies in the United States are caused by people who had healthcare bills that they couldn't pay. Those are middle class families who ended up losing their employer-sponsored health insurance because more and more employers are not providing health insurance, or the co-pays were too expensive, the employee shares. So it really triggers families, middle-class families, to become impoverished.
Bikha, what can be done to help feed more people while keeping an eye on government spending? Is there a way that the private sector can step up and help?
Well, and certainly there's always opportunities, welcomed opportunities for the private sector to donate. The unfortunate reality is that the private sector has been donating over the years. They've donated to food banks, they've donated to soup kitchens and food pantries, they've donated to other charities. The problem is so significant, though, that it's not enough. We have organizations that run soup kitchens and food pantries who are members. We have domestic violence shelters. We have foster care agencies, and they all the time go and look for foundations and corporate support. And really, that funding has shrunken since the Great Recession. These corporations had less and less money to give. So, given the extent of the problem, we need somebody like the government to be able to shore up that safety net. The dollar amount is just too large. The need and the problem is just too large to expect or to ask for the private sector to do it, because they haven't been able to do it. I mean, we ask all the time, and like I said, the money is actually shrinking there, not growing.
Bikha, let me jump in and ask you the question. You mentioned a social safety net. What do you say to critics who would say this is not the proper role of government? It's not government's responsibility to feed people. It's the individual's responsibility to provide for themselves.
We have a government that exists to make sure that the human needs and the structure of our society is sound and move forward, because there's no one else that's going to be there to help our families and our children and our elderly not become hungry, homeless, ill, sick, and dying on the streets. I think we as a community and the public very much, poll after poll, supports these programs that understand the need, especially since the Great Recession. The polling results show very strong support for these type of programs. But I think the average American out there, they have seen the detrimental impacts of not only the Great Recession, but the breaking up of the middle class in their own families, with their neighbors, with their extended families, with their co-workers. So we need, not only, the government is the only entity that has the resources to the degree needed. The private sector has not been stepping in to the level that would meet the need. And the American public has said that this is important and that it's a vital issue.
Bikha, I'd like to talk about what reforms you think are most needed, but we do need to take a quick break. Stay tuned for more with Bikha Pham right here on WHDT World News.